Hey guys, Kevin here with eTrailer, and today I'm going to be showing you how to install the Maxxair MaxxFan Deluxe here on our enclosed car trailer. A lot of people with these enclosed car trailers want to make sure that they can start to cool down the temperature in here, and putting in a AC or a roof vent is a great solution for that. Our Maxxair Deluxe fan is going to come with a remote, which is going to allow you to easily control your unit. It's going to have your on-off. You turn it on, and you can see on there our fan is on. It's opening up our dome. You can see it's set in manual mode right now because it has our speed, and it's saying we're at 10%. That's our lowest setting. This does go up to 100% in increments of 10. And right now we have the air filtering out. So if we look down here, we have this reversible button. So if we hit that, right now it's pulling the air out. Instead, it can push air down. If you close the vent lid itself, it's going to act more like a ceiling fan. Up top, we can see our temperature. So right now I have it set at 63. It's saying our room temperature is at 68. So if I wanted to change that, I can go down, and it goes down to 29. Obviously with a vent, you're really not going to get that low. It's not an AC unit, but you can hope. You can send it down there. We can switch over to auto mode. So when we switch to that, it's going to kick on and off as needed, depending on what temperature you have it set at, which is actually the reason why our neighbor went with us today. He likes to take his car hauler out and go hunting with it, and then use his four-wheelers, and wants to come back to a nice cool trailer instead of coming back and having it be super hot, because he's out in the woods in the sun and is able to just set this and walk away. Doesn't have to worry about it. He's not going to use a ton of gas running a generator or have to be hooked up to any kind of shore power, since all of this runs off of 12-volt DC. Looking at our vent itself, there's also the same buttons here on our control panel. We have our on-off, our reversible fan on and off, so basically sending the air in or out. We have our auto mode, and then you can also hold this to set it to 78, so that's just kind of a manufacturer basic kind of standard setting. We have our open and close, which is also going to change our temperature, so we can also affect what degree we want that set at. A little bit over here, we can see our bug screen. So there's a bug screen right here, and there's also one up in the dome itself. This is a replaceable part. All you have to do is just turn these knobs out, and you can drop it down and replace it. And then further up, we have our manual knob. So if you ran out of power, or you just wanted to open this and just kind of have it open instead of having the vent actually running, maybe you just want to put it in storage, but you want to leave it open so that you can get some fresh air in here, not have it be super stale and hot when you come back. You can just use that knob, open it right up, and be good to go. Up top here, you can see we have a nice white rain shield dome. This rain shield does come in two different colors. There is the white that we have here, and then also smoke, which is a little bit darker. It's pretty much black in my opinion. It doesn't really see through as much. But the best thing about this is that you can use this while traveling down the road. You can use it in rain, snow, sleet, anything, because the vent is actually going to be coming out here on this back side, and that's all blocked so that you don't have to worry about anything getting down inside. If you look down in the louvers of our vent here, there's also a nice bug screen in there as well. That's also going to help just keep all those annoying insects out of the inside of your trailer. As far as installation goes, it is fairly straightforward. I think the biggest issue you're going to have is just making sure that you don't cut into any wiring while you're cutting the hole in your roof, and then just running the wire through the walls depending on what kind of material you have. If you have an open trailer where you don't have walls on it yet, it'll be super simple. Just run that wiring right down the frame and then over to wherever your battery or power center is. So overall, you can definitely do this yourself at home. Just make sure that you pick up some butyl tape and self-leveling sealant as well, just to keep any water from leaking through our mounting flange. A lot of these car trailers usually have a really nice interior, like all these walls here and the ceiling here. It's pretty hard to get into it and actually install that roof vent or AC unit. So what we're going to be doing today is pulling down our trim on the side panels here so we can gain access to our ceiling. From there, we're going to pull this ceiling down so that we can see the supports that are actually running across, and then make sure that we have enough support for our roof vent, and then also just kind of figuring out the placement. So So after removing my trim, I realized I don't actually have to take this whole roof down. I'm gonna be able to see my studs. I've got plenty of room. I can sneak my wires through, and we can take a quick measurement and see what the distance is between our studs, just to make sure that we have enough space. So right now, between this stud and the next one, it's 15 inches. So we know that our 14 by 14 roof vent is gonna fit. And with these studs being metal, we're good to go support-wise. We don't have to worry about the weight of that vent holding the roof down and causing any damage. Now there is one other thing that we need to check, and that is our roof thickness. This vent can be placed in roofs as small as 1 1/8 inches, and then also up to 6.5 inches. So we just need to sneak our tape measure up there, and I'm sitting right at 1 3/4. So we got plenty of space. And I've measured across to get the exact center in between my two studs as well. And I've marked it right here with just some pencil. I'm gonna go ahead and take a punch and just make a little indent to make it easier for my drill bit. Next, I'm gonna take my drill bit and my hole saw. I'm just gonna open this up a little bit. This is the dead center of where we're gonna have our vent, but I wanna make sure that I don't have any wires or anything else in the way before I start really cutting into this. Now that I've kind of checked to make sure that there's nothing in the way, I don't have to worry about any wiring, I'm gonna go ahead, I'll pop just my drill bit through. So I'm gonna have my exact center up on the roof, and then I made this little template right here. So this is a 14 by 14 template. Got a hole in the center and then holes on each corner so that I can easily drill up and then use a saw to cut through our roof. So now I'm up on my roof. I've gone ahead and I've laid a piece of plywood across here, and that's gonna help even out my weight here so that way I don't fall through the ceiling. A lot of these aluminum roofs really aren't made for someone to be walking up on top of them. So go ahead and get some kind of support. That way you don't fall through your roof. I've gone ahead, I've got my tape measure, I've got my template, a drill, and then a jigsaw. What I've done is I've stuck my drill bit through the hole that I originally drilled through our roof, and I've taken my tape measure and I've measured out from the straight edge of our corner bead here up to my template just to make sure that I have this straight. So I just measured from each corner going over to that and made sure that they both had the same measurement. So now that I know this is all centered, I'm gonna go ahead, I have a Sharpie here. We're gonna go ahead and just mark along our template. Just take my punch and go in each corner, just so my drill bit doesn't walk on me. And then we can take our drill and start going through. All right, now I'm gonna just take my jigsaw and I'm gonna cut all along where we took our marker. Now that I have that cut out, I'm gonna go ahead. I had a little bit of issues on this one side just because it's between the two supports, so it was really kind of wobbling too much. So you just switched over to my multi-tool. Go ahead and finish cutting out the inner piece, and then I'm gonna clean up these edges. Typically drill in that, just that hole in each corner. Really don't get too tight, so I'm gonna go ahead and tighten that up, and then also take a file and kind of just go around these edges. I don't wanna end up cutting any wiring or anything else as we start to install our vent. So now that we have our opening cut, I'm gonna go ahead and run some fish tape from our hole over here all the way over to here so I can get it tied into our wiring and down to our power center. Now I am using a fish tape, doesn't matter what you use though, you can use some airline tubing, basically anything like a coat hanger, anything to just get you across. But we're gonna go ahead and I'll push this through right now. All right, right, I've just got some 14 gauge wire that we had laying around. I've got 2 of them. I got one for my ground, one for my power, and I'm just gonna run that up to my fish wire. I'm gonna tape it on there, and we'll pull it over into our wall. Now that I have that through, I can put my fish wire away, and we're gonna pull a good majority of this wire through. I've got quite a bit right now just because I wanted to make sure I had enough to get all the way over to our power center. So now we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna take our mounting plate off of our vent here, and we're gonna take some butyl tape, which you can also get here at etrailer, and we're gonna run this all along our mounting plate. And you'll see that there's 2 different sides here. There's gonna be a smooth side. This is gonna be up facing out from the trailer, and this is going to be our side that's on the trailer where it has all these grooves. Now we want our butyl tape to go across our screw holes because that's what's going to help prevent any water from leaking through. Get that on there nice and tight, and it's going to stick right down in each of those grooves and help give us a nice seal. And then we can kind of peel up on one corner, and we'll overlap. That way we know we have a nice tight seal. So just to kind of straighten this up a little bit more, I cut down some 2x4s to 14 inches, and I slid them in here just to kind of give it more, just because this aluminum roof really isn't much to hold on to. Plus we're going to be shooting down some screws in here for our mounting flange for our vent. So this is just going to give it a little bit of added strength. You can easily do this with whatever you have laying around. I did it on both sides, but on this side I made it a little bit shorter just so that I could fit my wiring through still without having any other issues. But I'm going to get those just kind of straight, and then we can take our mounting flange, peel back our paper backing, and we can stick it in place. But while we're doing this, we want to make sure that we have our sides with our screw holes facing out towards the side of our trailer. And we'll drop it in place and just kind of push down on it and let that butyl tape kind of stick to the roof. So your kit's going to come with some screws. There are different purposes for each one of these, and there's also some spade terminals depending on how you want to hook that up. We won't be using those today, so I'm going to set those aside. You're going to see some round-headed screws that are a little bit shorter than our other screws and a little bit fatter. Those 4 screws are going to be attaching our vent to our mounting flange. Our thinner round-headed screws are going to go all along our mounting flange. And then we're going to have 4 flat-headed screws with a white paint on the top of it. That's going to go into the cover. So when we screw that cover up into the ceiling, it's going to be using these. Now, because I have a steel stud running across this on both sides of our front and back, I am going to have to use some self-tapping screws. You will have to get that separately because it won't come in your kit, because the normal screws that come with your kit are just typically for wood. So it's really not going to cut into that, and you end up just chewing up the front of that screw. But we'll go ahead and send those in. Now for these, since I'm cutting into wood, these will be a lot better than the self-tappers at actually pulling it in. Those self-tappers typically just eat up wood. So I'm just going to take a plastic trim panel tool. I'm going to scrape off all that excess butyl tape. That kind of just gets in the way whenever you're trying to put on a self-leveling sealant. Now that we have all that set, we're going to go ahead and drop in our vent. And just like I said, we're going to have our mounting screws right in here and up here. This is quite a challenging spot just because they don't really give you enough room to really get in there. And also you got to put a lot of pressure on this to try and get those holes to actually line up. So it can be quite a process. I'm also going to loosen up my wiring just a bit, let it hang down in there so it's not all bundled up right in the way.
set it in place. We're going to want our vent side to be going over our flange side. What I find easier, because it is hard to get those holes to actually just line up, you got to kind of put a little bit of weight on it and just angle your screw down. Once you get it started, it'll kind of pull it down more. Then you can get it in. And we'll just repeat this on the other side. For our next step, we're going to be taking self-leveling sealant and running around our flange. Now, I do want to explain the differences. There's self-leveling and then there's non-sag. Self-leveling is going to sit on the roof of your trailer and it's going to kind of spread out, and it's going to give you nice coverage over everything. That way you don't have leaks coming in through the roof of your trailer. Now, the non-sag version instead is going to be real thick and it's going to stick to walls. So that's good if you have to go around windows, do some trim, or maybe you're installing something on the wall of your trailer. But in this case, we want to stick with our self-leveling, and we're going to put just a real big glob right over our screws, and then we're just going to kind of work our way down and get onto the roof of our trailer. Now, I find it's a lot easier if you have it still lifted up. You can get the sides and the back, and then when you lower it down, you can get more access to the front. We'll go ahead, and I cut my tip for the sealant gun here real wide because I just want to get a real big bead over this. Now we have our sealant on, we can go ahead and just remove this protective coating and our styrofoam here, and then we can get down inside and finish up wiring this. Our power is going to be our black wire here. I'm just going to use a butt connector. Crimp that on. And I'm going to use the brown that I have from that extra wire we had laying around and for my power, and the white for my ground. Same thing, just strip back the casing and twist it up and stick it into your butt connector. And then we'll do the same with our ground. Now, to just make things easy and also kind of protect it, I'm just going to go ahead and wrap my butt connectors with some electrical tape. This is going to kind of hold them together and make it a little bit easier as I slide it into the ceiling. Don't have to worry about those butt connectors catching on anything. And then we're just going to push this up, get a good majority of this wire out of the way. We are going to leave a little bit extra just because when we stick our shroud on here, we're going to have our wire also kind of sit inside this little gap that goes around here with the shroud. So it's good to leave just a little bit of extra because it's going to kind of try and pull on that. Your shroud's going to give you quite a bit of versatility here, but we're going to just cut this down to size because obviously we don't need this whole thing here. I'll stick it in, and then I'm just going to mark where my ceiling sits. If I can get a measurement here. I'm going to do it on each side. Now let's cut down. We're going to go ahead and just clean up all these burrs. You can just take a razor blade, kind of scrape it against there. Test fit it in here. When I put it in, I'm going to make sure that I have my cables out on the outside of it. I'm going to try and stick my shroud in on the inner portion. So I'm going to get it up in there. And we're all good. And that's actually kind of holding it in place for me. It's not dropping down. And I'm going to put my screw holes on the outside so that I can screw into those 2x4s. Because like I said before, there isn't really a self-tapping screw in that kit. And I don't really want to get anything that's going to sit out above the trim here. So I'm going to grab those 4 smaller flathead screws and we'll put those in place. Wait to push that in all the way. There we go. You don't want to go too hard here because this is just plastic. Just get it nice and snug. If you go any further, you'll end up cracking it. So now is also a good time to talk about with our wiring. If you really wanted to, you could add in a switch to power it on and off. With how low the ceiling is in here and how easy it is to access the controls on it, plus there's a remote for it. We're just going to go ahead and skip that. We don't want to tear up any more of the wall or anything like that, just to run a tiny little switch, which wouldn't even match our switches for all the lights and everything else in here. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to run our wire down the side here, and we're going to hide it behind this trim, and then go into our diamond plating here, because that runs down to our cabinet, and our power center is right on the wall right in here, and that's where we're going to run it to. So as I go along here, I am going to put some zip ties on, just keep it nice and tight with our wiring that's already in place. But we can start sneaking this through.
We were able to, after a little bit of trying, get a fish tape down our wall and over into our box for our control panel. So down here we have a grommet, and there's all the wiring running for our whole trailer running up to our power center. And what I've done so far is just put that fish tape through it. Now I'm going to go ahead and just pull my fish tape out. I want to get that out of the way before I start shooting that self-tapper through. Kind of guide it a little bit. And we can pull our wiring up. Now that I have that fish tape out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and shoot my self-tapper in. Kind of position that up. There we go. Now we have our ground in place and our power wire down at our power center. So now we're going to go ahead and we'll strip back some of our casing, and we'll twist that up. Now with this power center, all we'll have to do is just stick it in through this back hole, and then it's going to come up to this bar right here, and we'll just stick it in. And actually I think I might loop this just a little bit to kind of get it around that screw a bit more. So we'll stick that in, and like I said, I'm going to try and loop that back down just to really get it in there. And just tighten that down, and now we can stick in a fuse. Now with our fuse in place, all we need to do is put our power center back in place and start putting all of our trim back up. Well, I think that about does it for today's installation of the Maxxair MaxxFan Deluxe here on our enclosed car hauler trailer. My name's Kevin. Thanks for watching.